I suppose the trouble started long before I realized it. Not with shouting, not with slammed doors or cold silences. No. It was quieter than that. Like the steady dripping of a faucet in another room. You don't hear it at first, not until the stillness gets so deep that even small sounds become unbearable. That's how it began. My wife, Claire, and I, we were a team for 15 years. We had 3 kids, a mortgage, a dog who thought he owned the house, and routines that wrapped themselves around our days like vines. Birthdays. Soccer practices. School pickups. We weren't glamorous, but we were solid. Or at least I thought so. I thought that was enough. But over time, she started disappearing without leaving the house. Her eyes would wander in conversation. Her laugh became something I heard more often when she was texting than when she was with me. I chalked it up to stress. The kids. Work. Hormones. All those explanations husbands give themselves to keep the peace inside their own minds. It wasn't until I started catching inconsistencies, late nights that didn't match the stories, a change in perfume, a sudden obsession with her phone, that the drip became a roar I couldn't ignore anymore. And when I finally followed that noise, it led me straight into a storm I never thought I'd face. Not from her. Not from Claire. There's a moment in every man's life, I think, when time ceases to move forward. It doesn't go backward either, it just folds. Like your soul gets caught in a doorway that won't close, and you're left standing there with half of you in the past and the other half in a version of the present you never asked for. For me, that moment happened on a rainy Thursday. I had a hunch. Nothing more. Just enough suspicion to make a man betray his better judgment. I left work early without telling her. My heart didn't race. My hands weren't shaking. I think on some level, I already knew. Not in a paranoid way. Not even in an angry way. It was something quieter, the way animals know before the storm hits. Her car was in the driveway. So was another one, parked just around the bend. I almost laughed. The cliché of it. 1,000 warning bells were ringing, but I walked in anyway. Slow. Deliberate. Like a man approaching the gallows with his coat buttoned and his collar straight. And then I opened the door to our bedroom. What I saw didn't enrage me, not in the way movies show men flipping tables or throwing punches. No, what I felt was absence. Like something got vacuumed out of my chest. My breath didn't come. My legs didn't move. My voice, even if I tried to speak, would have sounded like it belonged to someone else. They scrambled, of course. Stammered. Covered themselves in bedsheets like that would hide the truth. Claire looked at me like I was a ghost. But I wasn't. I was real, painfully, vividly real. More real than I had been in years. I didn't yell. I just turned and walked out, closed the door behind me, and stood in the hallway where our wedding photo still hung. We were smiling in that picture, holding hands in the golden light of a September evening. And all I could think was, so this is how it dies. Not with rage. Not with blood. Just silence. The kids were still at school when it happened. Thank God for that. The house was quieter than a church when I stepped into the kitchen, still breathing like a man who forgot how. I remember the way the afternoon light hit the tile, indifferent, soft, like nothing had happened. Like the world outside my chest was still intact. My hands moved on their own. I don't know why I reached for her favorite mug, the one with the chipped rim and the faded bluebirds on the side. Maybe I thought breaking something would give the pain somewhere to go. Maybe I wanted to feel the sound of something shatter that wasn't me. It didn't help. The mug hit the floor and cracked in 2 neat pieces, like it had been waiting to fall apart. No drama. No explosion. Just the clean, final click of a bond giving way. I sat down at the table and stared at it for a long time. There wasn't rage. Not yet. There was only betrayal's older brother, humiliation. That quiet, creeping kind of shame that doesn't come from being wrong, but from realizing you were the last one to see the truth. That you were living in a dream someone else had already woken up from. I thought about the times I rubbed her feet after work when she was too tired to move. The nights I stayed up with the baby so she could sleep. The anniversary gifts I spent weeks planning. All of it, every word, every kiss, every second of loyalty, now suspended in the air like dust caught in a shaft of light, floating, meaningless. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Some tears are too heavy to fall. Instead, I cleaned up the pieces of the mug like a man cleaning up the scene of his own robbery. And when she finally came downstairs, wrapped in silence and shame, I didn't look at her. I just said, "They'll be home soon. We need to be ready." Because I was a father before I was a husband. And some duties don't wait for your heart to catch up. Counseling came later. Not out of hope, but out of obligation. Like repairing a home not because you believe it can be beautiful again, but because your name's still on the deed and winter's coming. We sat side by side on that soft beige couch, her hands folded in her lap, mine clenched under my thighs like fists I was trying to hide. The therapist asked questions, gentle ones, probing ones, the kind designed to peel people open. Claire spoke first. She always did. She had the gift of tidy emotions, well wrapped in language, polished like river stones. "I didn't mean to," she said, staring at the carpet. "It just happened." That phrase. I've heard people say it 100 times. About accidents. About falling asleep. About rainstorms. But betrayal doesn't just happen. You walk toward it. One step at a time. And I said that. Not with fire, but with finality. "You made 1,000 little choices before the big one." She didn't deny it. She just nodded like she'd already had that conversation with herself and lost. Over the weeks that followed, we went through the motions. Exercises in rebuilding. Assignments in vulnerability. We unpacked our past like boxes we'd stored too long in the attic, full of forgotten hurts, misread intentions, tired resentments. I admitted my part too. The silences I let grow. The walls I didn't notice she was building. I wasn't perfect, far from it. But here's the difference. When I failed her, I was still with her. When she failed me, she left. Emotionally, physically, all of it. She vacated our shared world and rented space in someone else's without ever handing in her keys. The hardest part wasn't the infidelity itself. It was realizing she found something in him that I didn't even know she still wanted. The laughter. The curiosity. The way she dressed again like someone who wanted to be seen. The lipstick. The mirror smiles. And when I asked her quietly, one night after counseling, "Did you ever feel that way with me?" She answered with a long silence then. "I did. A long time ago." That was the moment I stopped being angry. And started mourning. They say time heals all wounds. But they never mention how slow time moves when you're sharing a bed with a stranger who once loved you like air. Nights became the hardest. The lights would go out, the house would fall still, and that quiet space between our bodies would stretch like a canyon. Once, we used to sleep tangled together, legs brushing, her hand resting on my chest, like we were holding each other through dreams. But now, she lay with her back turned, curled toward the wall, breathing shallow and rhythmic, like I wasn't even there. And I would lie there too, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, counting regrets like stars. I didn't want to touch her, not out of bitterness, but out of reverence. Like reaching across that mattress might break the spell of whatever delicate peace we had managed to fake in daylight. One night, maybe 2 months after counseling began, I whispered into the darkness, "Do you love me?" It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even a question, not really. Just a sound, like checking the echo of your own voice in an empty house. She hesitated. Then, "I don't know." And that was somehow worse than no. I don't know. 15 years, 3 kids, holidays, shared jokes, mortgage payments, whispered promises in hospital delivery rooms, all reduced to I don't know. Like love had become a misplaced item she might eventually stumble upon again, tucked between old receipts and half-remembered dreams. But me? I did know. I still loved her. Not blindly, not foolishly. But stubbornly, the way a man loves the home he built with his own hands, even if it's falling apart around him. So I stayed. Not out of weakness. Not because I feared being alone. I stayed because I wanted to look our failure in the eye and know I hadn't run from it. Even if she already had. It crept up slowly, the version of myself I barely recognized. Somewhere between the therapy sessions, the strained breakfasts, and the pretend smiles for the kids, I started becoming a shadow. Not broken. Just dulled. Like metal left out in the rain too long. Still strong, still intact, but the shine was gone. Mornings were the worst. I used to get up with purpose. Brew the coffee before the house stirred, shave clean, straighten the collar, carry the weight of the day like it belonged to me. But now, I'd stand at the mirror, toothbrush limp in my hand, just watching the man inside the glass. He had my eyes, but none of my certainty. He looked tired, not in the body, but in the bones. That kind of tired that no nap, no weekend off, no vacation could fix. He looked like a man who was slowly realizing that love alone doesn't rebuild what's been gutted. Claire had changed too, but in a different way. She stopped wearing the new makeup. Stopped checking her phone every 5 minutes. But she also stopped reaching for me in any way. No touch, no warmth, no glance that lingered. She was polite. Cordial. Like a co-worker you once shared something with but can no longer quite look in the eye. The house functioned though. Bills got paid. Kids got fed. Laundry folded. You'd think everything was fine, from the outside. But there was no laughter anymore. No spontaneous dance in the kitchen when a song came on. No casual sarcasm. Even our fights had died, replaced by indifference, which somehow cut deeper. One evening, I sat alone in the garage, door half open, drinking a beer in the dark. The kids were inside, Claire was upstairs, and I was just there. Existing. I remembered something my father once told me after my mother passed. He said, "The cruelest part of life isn't losing the people you love. It's watching them leave while they're still standing in front of you." I didn't know what he meant back then. Now I did. I was watching a woman disappear by inches, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. And the cruelest part? She didn't seem to mind. There came a night, and I'll remember it as long as I breathe, when the silence between us felt louder than any fight we ever had. We were sitting at the dinner table. The kids were off in their rooms, plates cleared, homework half finished, music playing softly in the background. Just her and me, across from one another, two ghosts pretending to still live in a house made of brick and drywall and old promises. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment I caught something in her eyes. Not guilt. Not regret. Something closer to weariness. Like she'd been carrying a weight neither of us could name, and her arms were finally giving out. And I asked softly, without blame, "Are you still here because you want to be, or because you're afraid of what leaving would mean?" She didn't answer right away. Just stared at the candle between us. The flame danced a little, unbothered by our wreckage. Then she spoke, almost too quietly for me to hear. "I don't know who I am without all this. Not without me. Not without us. But without all this. The house. The kids. The structure. The identity. It wasn't me she didn't want to leave. It was the scaffolding of the life we built. And in that moment, I realized the saddest truth of all. She wasn't in love with me anymore. And she wasn't in love with him either. She just missed who she was when she felt wanted. And maybe I wasn't innocent either. Maybe somewhere along the way I stopped seeing her as a woman and started seeing her only as a partner. A mother. A name on the lease. We both played our parts in the slow death of this thing. But only one of us reached for someone else while it was still breathing. That night I didn't argue. I didn't demand answers she couldn't give. I just nodded, pushed back my chair and said, "I think I'm starting to forget who I am too." And I walked outside barefoot, into the cool night air, and let the darkness press against me like a blanket. Not to escape her, but to find myself again. There's a kind of clarity that only arrives when everything else has fallen away. When the noise dies down, the pretending ends, and you're left alone with the raw truth of your life. It hit me one morning, as I was tying my shoes. Something so small. Mundane. But I looked down at my hands, these same hands that built a crib for our first child, that held hers through sleepless nights, that dug trenches in the backyard for sprinkler lines and lifted her when she twisted her ankle that summer at the lake, and I thought, what are these hands doing now? They were tying shoes for a man who had forgotten how to walk forward. That morning, I didn't go to work. I drove out to a lake about an hour away, the one we used to take the kids to before things got hard. I sat on a bench and watched the water move, not frantically, not urgently. Just steadily, like it had all the time in the world to reach where it was going. And I realized, I was still waiting for Claire to come back to something she had already left. That wasn't loyalty anymore. That was self-abandonment. Forgiveness doesn't mean staying. Strength doesn't always mean rebuilding. Sometimes strength is knowing when you've done all you could, and stepping away with your head high. I went home that evening and told her calmly that I was letting go. Not in anger. Not in punishment. But in mercy, for both of us. Because two people can share a roof and still die of thirst if they've stopped pouring into each other. She didn't cry. She nodded, a little stunned. And for the first time in years, she looked at me, not through me. Not past me. But at me. Like she finally saw the man standing in front of her, not just the husband she'd grown tired of. We made arrangements. Slowly. Carefully. For the kids. For the house. For the life that had been. No one screamed. No one blamed. There were tears, yes, but mostly quiet ones, the kind you cry when you're grieving something already gone. And now? Now I wake up in a smaller place. The walls are bare. The silence is real. But so is the peace. Because I chose dignity. Because I chose truth. Because I chose me. And for the first time in a long, long while. That man in the mirror looks like someone I remember. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help this video reach more viewers. See you in the next one.